All right. And we're live in 3, 2, 1. What's up, Mark?
How's it going, Lucas?
So I guess this has been a pretty big week. We have some more activity in Chaz. We have, what else we got?
Well, midterms, so those sucked. But also, oh man, I just got killed in my midterms. But also, a lot of stuff actually this week.
China, India. There was a
China and India
dispute.
going to war.
Well, it's just a clash. Supposedly, there was no actual weapons. It was
sticks and stones and fists. Apparently.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is wild. But also, in more like positive, happy news, well, depending on how you feel about it. So a group of scientists, researchers, I think they use CRISPR to input a human gene that is tied to the development of human brains versus apes and monkeys. And what they did is they injected this gene into, I think, macaques, like fetal macaques, and watched their brain development over 100 days, like in utero. And what they saw was like more folding in the brain. The brain was growing like larger. And there are experiments that have been looked at that suggested increases in short-term memory. Anyway, it's all very Planet of the Apes. I'm going to say this, I'm pretty stoked about it. Although there are some ethical concerns apparently with making smart monkeys. And some of those concerns is, well, so the way they circumvented these concerns is that the fetuses were removed at 100 days from the monkeys, and then they sent the brains to Germany or Japan. It went to and from between Germany and Japan at some stage. And they're doing research on these brains. But there are some people who are saying it's like unethical to make smart monkeys because, like, what if they don't fit into society? Like, or what if they don't fit into their own monkey society when they're released back?
I mean, that's probably a real problem, you know.
But also, come on, we can have smart monkeys. Like, and people are mad. There is one ethical argument that is, well, apes are, I think,
right.
35,000 years separated from us in terms of divergence
in development,
and just in divergence of the species, like an actual speciation where Homo sapiens.
Like, right. So how long would it take, like this CRISPR technology to get real smart monkeys? Because just because that's it,
because they are not actually bringing these monkeys like to fruition, right? They're not being born and like, at least I don't think. At least the ones in the one experiment were not. I think there might be another one. But there was experimenters in China doing very similar research. And
so basically if China's doing it, now we got to do it.
Actually, I'm not sure who was doing it first. America's not involved. It's like Japan, Germany, and China.
We are not involved in any monkey business.
No. At least as far as I know. I don't know where all the research teams come from. But I mean, come on, smart monkeys. As carriers of the torch of knowledge, is it not our duty to help others carry that torch? Like, come on. If you have the ability to give a species an intelligence like that, and the only thing really differentiating us from that species is our intelligence, doesn't the ethical argument to keep them from being intelligent sound a little biased? How will we be the smart monkeys if we have other smart monkeys? Like,
that's such a human thing to say, though.
We are the carriers of knowledge, right? Like the flame of knowledge from, who is it? Protheus?
Yeah.
I'm sure I said that wrong. Protheus. What an idiot. Prometheus, right? Where he brought down fire and like that's the spark of intelligence for mankind. Like now, if we have the potential to just like, boom, fist bump a monkey that torch, why are we saying that it is unethical?
I mean, what if monkeys aren't ready for all of that? It's a lot to ask
Ready
for
for it? Who the fuck are we to judge them? And not to mention, it's not like it'd be all monkeys. It would just be a selected group of monkeys.
Oh,
What if we just had a group and then they could procreate or whatever, but they would still be a divergence from the original species? Say they do it just with macaques, right? You have macaques that live in the wild, and then you would have this smart group of macaques that also exist, that are capable of breeding with the old macaques, but still like are actually genetically like different.
what if they're
And there
so
is
smart they don't want to breed with the other macaques?
maybe they won't. That would tell. I think that would teach us a lot about ourselves. Honestly, don't you?
I mean,
Because
yeah.
then you know what the
But
first
then
thing people would say
then at
is
the
that
end of the
those
day, you're
monkeys
gonna
are
have.
racists. That's what people would say, because technically they are correct. But also, I feel like that would just be such a good learning lesson for humanity to be like, holy shit,
Yeah.
this is
Well,
where it comes from.
well, maybe China will do it. Maybe China
I
will
don't
take
know.
care of it, and you know.
But also, what if the monkeys do? What if they like are better than us? What if they gain all this intelligence very rapidly as a species, meanwhile seeing us and interacting with us and learning about us, and they like hit their classical era, and you know, suddenly they have a bunch of philosophers and they're like, oh shit, and they stick with it. Instead of us, we were like, we went through the classical era, we had a bunch of philosophers, and then we were like, nah, we
Yeah.
don't care what they think.
They
That's
just
all
learn?
theory. That's all theory. Like
They
actually
just
being
learn how to
ethical.
like read Tocqueville, and they remodel
Yeah.
democracy in America.
So
That'd
wouldn't
be
that be interesting though? Like to see a species gain that sort of intelligence and then develop as a species, observing us and learning about these philosophies and seeing like how they react to that. Do they
Yeah,
actually engage with these studies of ethics because they see where they have come from in our society? Wouldn't that be fascinating to see? Because they'd be learning about everything all at once.
yeah, that would be pretty interesting to see.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know
I
if
don't know.
I'm
I don't know.
ready
I think
for
there's
all of
some
that.
hokey pokiness about this ethical argument that they should not be intelligent. That just sounds so biased to me.
That
To be like,
sounds like
we could give
monkey,
you guys,
monkey superiority. Because after all, we are just monkeys.
we could give you sentience, but we're not going to. That's such a God play move.
Yeah.
We could give you intelligence. We could give you self-awareness, maybe at some point. We could give you actual like human
We
level
could force
intelligence.
monkeys to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Why aren't we?
really messed up. I don't. You're like, why aren't we?
I mean, I just feel like share the love, you know.
I mean,
Hello.
it only. You know.
Or is the argument that knowledge is inherently painful, and like knowledge is a curse?
Well, that's one of the
There's
things.
blissful ignorance, and then there's knowledge, which is a gift and a curse, and like you can bestow that on another species. But who are you to say that
that's one
maybe
of the
they
things
actually
that,
would be happier without intelligence?
Yeah.
Well, they have intelligence. They have lots of intelligence, but it's similar type of intelligence from us. Just imagine. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, can monkeys, do they have the concept of time?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, because I know
They
that
have the concept of money. They have
well,
concept of money.
time is one of like the very important things, because
yeah, but think about that. They have a concept of money without necessarily having a concept of time.
Oh,
doesn't that tell you something else kind of interesting about like the way that humans behave?
Yeah, well,
you're able to like that as an ape, which is humans are great apes, right? You are able to come up with a barter system using actual tokens and understand it and utilize it. There's been studies done with apes where they gave them washers, and the washers could be traded for food. And that was the first time they observed literal exchange of money thing for sex by apes. This thing that they were carrying, they could do nothing with, but they knew if they traded it in, they could get food.
Wow.
So they introduced a concept of money to apes.
No, that's
And then
that.
prostitution was like the first purchase, actually. Anyway, so that says
It
something
sounds
interesting
like
about apes, don't you think? Can you imagine that we're very far off from that when we were first starting out?
no, I don't imagine we are. That is so crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a concept of time. I'm trying to find some sort of a study. Let's see. Monkeys share the human ability to internally maintain a temporal rhythm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I do know for certain that they can understand the concept of money,
Wow.
which is just fascinating to me.
No, I
Just
mean,
fascinating.
I wonder if it equates to the idea of the free market. You know,
Oh,
just
shut the
this
fuck up.
No, I'm serious though. If monkeys have a free market, like, don't you think that we might have to have a free market, and maybe any attempt to try to overthrow the free market might not be a good idea? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm
Because here's
just
the other
throwing
thing.
one out there, throwing
I
ideas out
mean,
there.
maybe, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that, like, I don't know if you can necessarily call it a free market. You can call it an exchange of money. It's not
Well,
necessarily a market because you're not seeing any like economic systems or regulations or any sort of economic patterns. You're just seeing an exchange of money. There is no regulation on the value of that money. There is no regulation on like any of it. And there's also nothing that binds that other than just it can purchase
well, there's
food.
no real. I mean, there
Well,
is
it's
some
not
regulation.
necessarily the same as saying, no, not by the apes.
Well, for money in general in the United States, like,
And even in humans, early money was not necessarily like,
yeah, it was
yes,
shells. They had like
economy.
shells.
There was an economy,
Yeah.
but it wasn't an economy in like the way that you would think about it today. It's just an understanding that we're going to say this has some kind of a value.
Right. That's all it is.
And
I
yeah,
mean,
okay, which is very much the free market, because what it is
that's
at
what
the
I was.
very beginning, you say, all right, well, I would like to buy half of your chicken. You can't buy half a chicken, the farmer
You're like,
says.
give me
and you
half
say,
a washer.
well, how about this? Yeah, exactly. So
Now, if monkeys start, what if they have 2 washers, and what could they get with 3 washers? I wonder. That would probably be a very interesting experiment.
anyway, but what I'm
Give one
thinking
monkey
here
all
is
the
that if you
washers and see what
have,
happens. Or do you have trickle down washing
and I think
washers?
apes already have pretty incredible intelligence already. Like they can understand quite a lot. They can speak to us. They have capable of sharing like emotions and memories with us, making jokes. Like they have a lot of intelligence already. They're not so far off
And
from
they
us.
probably developed in a different way, though, because I mean, we went one way. They probably went somewhere else. You know what I mean? They have a different type of knowledge.
What about this? They have an equal level of intelligence, but their method of communication is completely like separate from ours. Just because their intellect is programmed to do something different from our own.
It's possible. I have no idea though, because I'm not a evolutionary biologist.
I mean, I don't know either, but I'm just throwing stuff out there. Just trying to imagine a world where we could be walking around with monkeys, working with. How cool would that be?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for all that yet. I'm just trying to survive 2020. That's my goal right now.
Well, I'm trying to imagine a world where I could be friends with a monkey.
I mean, maybe that's the real cure. You know, we just got to get all of society to just get behind the monkey boom. We're gonna train them, and they're.
What if they taught us a whole lot about how to be better?
Yeah, they just say like, don't do violence upon other people. Just like basic things.
That would definitely not happen. Monkeys are incredibly violent,
but they know better.
What do you mean they know better?
I don't know.
I mean, that's another question: is do they require a certain level of intelligence to make ethical choices like violence is bad in general? And if they do, who is to say that they would subscribe to that because that's also very human centric. What if they subscribe to a completely different idea that, like, yeah, there's violence, it's a tool? What if that is the ethics of monkeys, but they have the same intellect as us? So there, because I've read a lot of articles about how people measure
Well, I
intellect
mean,
and
that is
humanity and all these other things in these animals. And some of the things that they look at is their ability to understand ethical principles, which is very biased towards them thinking as people think ethically and have worked on thinking ethically for a long, long time, which even if they had the same level of intelligence, what if they just disagreed with our system of ethics?
I mean, there
Even
are
in humans, there's lots of
yeah, I
people
was
who
gonna say
disagree
there are
with systems
humans
of ethics.
who disagree. Like, there's a lot of people who have historically said, violence is the only real option. You see that?
Yeah, so imagine if it's somebody with like imagine someone from a culture where violence is seen as a tool and not as an ethical, like, oh, that's just never okay.
You mean like the radical Marxists?
I mean, I don't know. I'm saying not some ideology, but an actual culture that exists in the world,
hmm
right? I'm sure there's one. It used to be a lot more, but I'm sure there's still at least one.
Well, what about like
Although
the
I can't name
warring,
anybody in particular
the
off my
Comanche
head.
tribes, the Comanche tribes in America?
Okay, there
Um,
you go. There's an
they
example.
were like warring tribes that they were like that's what they did. Like they didn't have like the same concepts of civilization as us. They just ruled over each other. I mean, I guess to some extent it does make sense, like as messed up as their logic may be. I mean, like if you have the power to just take economic resources from another tribe and they can't do anything because you're the bigger person and you have better technology, then why not? It's like a simple, what is it?
Machiavellian.
Game logic or game theory. It's like simple game theory. If you could get away with it, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Like if it's going to benefit you like significantly.
Well, maybe that's where our ideas of ethics are coming from, because a lot of the basis of civilization was warring peoples in a lot of places in the world. It
Right.
was lots of places in the world basically were tribes that were
Well, I
warring
mean,
against each other and would just take over whoever they want, even as recently as like the 1800s.
right.
In
Well,
the early
yeah.
1900s. It was the same shit that had been going on forever. It just got a lot more advanced, right?
And then
And
you
it was
have the Cold
basically,
War.
we're going to take your land,
Mhm.
and sucks to be
And
you.
you're not going to do anything about it, and you're going to be our
Exactly, right?
slaves, and like
So
that's it.
maybe this current system of ethics that I think is probably more at the forefront of ethics in humanity today, just in general, of violence is not the way, or whatever,
Well,
is
that's the thing.
resultant
That's
of
the thing.
that
Is like we
maybe.
don't know if violence is the way or isn't the way because like right now the United States is like currently in charge of the whole entire international system. And like what we're seeing right now with like China and India is that they acknowledge that China, or the United States is a diminishing power. We no longer have the power to project force in our current political climate while we have essentially revolution in the streets. And if like Trump has to like mobilize like actual active duty military bases and uses those assets on the military people to preserve order, what we're most likely going to see is a China, rising up and maybe challenging Hong Kong, taking it, and there's not going to be much we could do
Well, they
about it.
basically are right now.
Right? Yeah, they are right now, but they're not going to be able to. If China does that right now, they're not going to be able to get away with it because I
Why
think,
not? Who's going to do anything about it?
well, Trump will for sure. I mean, it's smarter for China just to wait
Will
a couple
he?
more months. You don't
Will
think
he?
that Trump? You don't think if China went into Hong Kong right now to take it, you don't think that Trump would do anything? I think that would be a huge like he would definitely send in some type of military force, and he would probably try to like awaken a nationalist movement here in the United States to get behind something because like that's war historically is what like unifies a people.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know if that would necessarily happen. I don't
I
know.
mean,
I think
this is a
he might
question that
watch it and be
we're
like, well, Hong Kong belonged to China. I don't know.
Well,
I'm
that's.
not sure.
I mean,
Either way,
I
it
just
does. It's
hope
just
if it,
speculation. It
it
doesn't really matter to have a discussion about whether he would or would not. That's not.
right.
I
I
don't
just
think
hope
pertinent.
if they do something, I hope that Trump doesn't make things worse by sending in military troops, because I don't even know how America's going to react. I don't know if it's um
Here's how I think America would
if we
react.
go to, if like
I
if things could
think
get a
that this.
revolution here or not.
No, I think that if Trump sent an active duty military, the American military, in to liberate Hong Kong from mainland China, the American people would get behind it. And the
Maybe.
reason that I say that, well, I don't know. I think the reason I say that is because Hong Kong protesters have been protesting for like a year now.
Yeah,
And at
but
one point, they were waving American flags in the street, like asking for American assistance in defending themselves from mainland China. And I think that if we were to go in, step in militarily in Hong Kong against China, I think a lot of Americans would have a hard time saying that that's not the right thing to do.
you
Because
would
in
hope.
order for you to say that, you would have to be agreeing with China's right to annex Hong Kong.
Right. Well, you would hope that, but here's the thing: it's
Unless
like
I'm
with the
missing something, unless you
no,
can
you are
disagree and
missing
still not
something.
like the war.
You are missing something, and it's what we're currently seeing happening with the masses being mobilized with the radical left, and like the people who are in charge, and like the voice piece, for the radical left, like they would point to a U.S. action overseas as another imperialistic adventure,
I don't know.
and that's.
I
I
think
mean, I
there's a lot
guarantee
of
you
liberal
that's
left
that.
people that I know who very much think that we should support Hong Kong and not just
Yeah,
with
well, with
words.
everything going on in the United States, you would just see some type of movement, and it'd be like, why is the United States going to war with Hong Kong when we can't even take care of our own
We
streets
wouldn't be
here?
going to war with Hong Kong. We would
No,
be
I mean,
going
I
to war with
understand, but
China. And I
this is the
think
rhetoric that
everybody
would
on both sides of the political spectrum
this is the
both
rhetoric that would
see
be
China
coming
as a
out.
threat.
You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be like, oh, when black
I mean,
people are
yeah, but only in small
getting killed in
pockets,
the
I think.
streets, why would we go over there? And they have like a strong case to be made by that.
I don't know about that. I think that I,
Yeah.
a lot of people I've spoken to on the left side of the political spectrum very much think that Hong Kong has been crying out for help and we have not supplied it. We have not answered the call.
Yeah, but what are we gonna do?
Which
We
is
can't
one of
do
the
anything.
very, we
It's
could,
I mean, we
but it would
could.
also ignite probably one of the largest wars we've had ever, because we would
Yeah.
basically be saying we're going to war with China. Well, we
Mm.
wouldn't. What we would say is that we're going in to defend Hong Kong from an invasion, and we would be stuck inside of Hong Kong, and then China would say, well, we're declaring war on you because this is none of your goddamn business. That's how I think it would probably go down.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the lessons we've learned from World War II, right, would suggest that Trump would be right to stop China, to prevent China from taking Hong Kong, because Hitler took Poland, and they were kind of weak about it, and England and France declared war on Germany. But I don't know. I the
Well,
way
I
I
mean,
do
look
see
at China
China.
and India right now.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like, the way I see this is a challenge of the international borders. Like, they are, like, China doesn't accept the notion of the nation state at all. Like, they view themselves in the historical context of like the Chinese Empire. They consider Hong Kong to be part of them. They even consider Indochina, like Vietnam, and to be an extension of its empire. So that's, I don't know. Like, I think we are going to see another shift. There's probably war likely to happen, somewhere on like the Asian, European continents. I don't think that the United States necessarily has to do anything about it. I think, like, we're the best hope for the world, and if we just maintain a strong military force to be able to strike whenever, but also maintaining our isolationism because we have stuff to deal with here,
But
is
then
kind
what's
of.
the point of having this giant force where you could strike forever? We have carriers deployed all over the entire world. There's carriers in the Asia Pacific theater all the time, and there has been forever. What's the point of having all of that if you're not actually going to utilize it except for projection of force? At a certain point, if you don't back up your fucking talk with action, your talk becomes empty.
I mean, you're
Which
right.
is projection of force without action. We
You're
project
right.
force all the time, but what that's supposed to do is say, hey, we're just projecting, we could fuck you up. And the objective of that is that they never do anything out of line.
Yeah, but
if they start doing things out of line and we do nothing about it, then they will realize that we are like a caged tiger.
Yeah, but can we really fuck them
Politically.
up is the real question. And I don't think
Oh,
so.
fuck yeah. Are you?
I don't
What?
think so.
Technologically, we are so much more advanced. They have
That
yes,
means
obviously
nothing.
they have this massive land army, but we don't use land armies anymore. And also, they don't have the logistical.
So we're going to resort
to
towards
transport them towards America.
So we're going to be a continuation of Cold War Part 2 with the threat of nuclear war is basically what you're saying.
That's very possible.
So,
I'm not saying that it is the right thing, but
no,
what
I mean, like I don't know because
USSR, if the USSR had been they were annexing places all over the place, but like if during the Cold War things didn't de-escalate, what would have happened?
They were a continued escalation. There was a continuous escalation throughout the Cold War, and then randomly, the Soviet Union gave up. Like the CIA didn't even see.
You don't call
the
that
fall
a
of
de-escalation?
Huh?
You don't call that a de-escalation?
No, it just the Soviet Union fell overnight. Like the CIA analysts didn't even expect it. It was a very random event. Like the way I interpret the Cold
What
War
I'm
is
saying
is a gradual escalation all the way until the
You
end.
don't see that as a contributing factor for de-escalating the Cold War.
Well, who's to say the Cold War is even over? Like that was just
okay.
that was just George Bush
I feel like you're trying
said,
to make like a very far-reaching argument right now. And what I'm saying is that by that happening, did the Cold War lower in terms of attention? Yes, it did.
well,
that is why we are not
fighting.
Paralyzed in fear of nuclear annihilation right now,
well,
like people were during the Cold War.
Our tactics for fighting changed. So like from the Korean War, what we learned from the Korean War is that we can't send another military in like World War II. It just costs too much to send military battalions to war. And then so what we tried to do in Vietnam was to do more of a like special forces training their military to fight for them. And then after 10 years of really being there, they kind of just pulled out, and that didn't work. In the 1980s, when Reagan went in, that's when you have like the CIA paramilitary forces going and basically doing a counterinsurgency operations the same way that like China and North Vietnam did on the United States. We did it to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and yeah, the Soviet Union was broke, so it just ended up falling. But I think like the methods of
happening,
the method for like preventing things. Yeah. So
on the every individual person level, you don't think that de-escalated things when that happened, when that occurred. You don't think that tensions were less felt by the American public?
Well, yeah, I mean, tensions definitely were less felt.
Sake, this is what I've been saying for the last 10 minutes, man. That's the point I'm getting at, is that these de-escalations are important because what they do is they reduce tension, right? If tension had just increased and increased and increased between the Soviet Union and America, say the Soviet Union never fell, the system worked, and they were economically successful, and they grew their military might, you don't think that tensions would have escalated to where they are right now, especially looking at the way that Russia behaves with the countries around it?
Well, here's the thing: it's like,
the same shit.
Well, how would the United States even intervene in Hong Kong? Like by literally just sending.
I'm not saying that they can. I'm just
China could just wipe Hong Kong off of the face of the map and then get to claim the territory afterwards. Like they have that power.
They could. But I think the thing here is like, I think there is an understanding that China, America, India, Russia pretty much have the ability to wipe anybody off of the map.
Yeah.
That's possible. And I think that China, while hungry for stuff, also understands military might and the trade of the cost of a particular acquisition of a piece of land, such as Hong Kong, which is probably how China sees it, as an economic and tactical acquisition of a land.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of them trying to blow it up and remove it, or even just invade it with military troops, if the American military was just there and did not leave the borders of Hong Kong, which sounds very Vietnam and Korea, but if they stayed in Hong Kong and defended Hong Kong, I think China would recognize that the cost of them going to war over this and declaring war on us and wiping out our troops in Hong Kong would be greater than the economic incentives they get from having trade relations with us.
Right.
I think they understand that. But I also think that China understands if they can just walk in there, which they currently are, and nobody's going to even do anything, then why the fuck shouldn't they? Because what they're saying is, whoa, well, we can acquire this and it doesn't even cause a conflict. It costs us nothing. It costs us nothing to just take this, because the people who we do business with, America primarily, aren't going to stop us from doing it, because it's too expensive for them too. Because the cost of doing this is economically just terrible.
It is very.
So China knows they can get away with it. But I'm saying, beyond economics, do we not have a duty to go around touting that we're the world police, which we fucking do? Come on.
I know that's
all the
question.
time. Go around touting that we're these heroes of the world, and then when people are crying out for help that they're being fucking oppressed and invaded, and we just say, nah. You know what I mean? There are economic incentives, obviously, for avoiding it. But at what point is ethics more important than our character? Or is economics more important than our character and our ethics?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What is our character but our actions? And so if we don't act and we are complicit in this because it was economically valuable for us not to, even understanding that it would cause tensions between our nations for a long time, possibly escalate them quite a lot, but possibly maybe it wouldn't, because possibly China might be able to recognize that, well, we could go into this huge giant war with America over Hong Kong, but we're doing fine without Hong Kong. And it's not worth the symbolic reach to go into this giant war over this particular thing.
Who's to say it isn't?
Why do you think that they are able to capture Tibet? Because America would straight up have to go through India or China, deploy troops on the ground to do anything about that. We're never going to do that. That's never going to happen. But if we had access to it from the outside.
Hong Kong's a perfect strategic port. Here's the thing, though, is that, like, if the United States were to do that, like, does that, like, just mean a continuation of, like, British colonialism? Because, like, that's how we got the Hong Kong question even started.
But that doesn't mean that we have to own Hong Kong. We can be there and defend them and let them run their own shit how they want to.
Well, here's the thing, though, is, like, during the Vietnam War, like, that's what we did. Like, the French were there, they had a colony, they exploited the Vietnamese, and then we took it over, and it didn't matter to the Vietnamese. They just saw us as the continuation of French colonialism, and we were trying to, take over.
But were the Vietnamese calling out for us to come actually help them, or did we decide we needed to go help them?
There were people in the South Vietnam who were calling for us to help come and take care of them. I mean, you can make the case that it is a more industrialized nation, like, you know, like that's obviously
Well, and
true.
information travels a lot faster, but I also
Yeah.
think the actual implementation of these things can make a big difference. I think that disseminating information into Hong Kong, letting them know, hey, or you know what you could do? You could straight up just go have one of our politicians, maybe Donald Trump, that's never going to happen, but a politician of ours go to Hong Kong, speak to their politicians and say, hey, do you want us to come to Hong Kong and fight China out of your land?
So
Right?
crazy.
Why does Hong Kong not get to be part of the discussion? Right? Because if you actually go to the government in Hong Kong and say, hey, would you like us to remove these people from your borders? And then the people are like, yes, that'd be great. You televise it. You spread it over the internet. Like, you can make it clear, hey, we're not here to take your shit. We're not here to exploit you. We're literally just going to be here to defend your borders and help you maintain, you know, sovereignty over yourselves.
The United Nations does not recognize Hong Kong as a nation. That's why. I guess we probably don't do anything about it.
Yeah, but fuck the United Nations? You know who? Like they just jerk themselves off, dude. Like,
yeah,
that's because of this idea
that.
of the nation state, and Hong Kong is saying, hey, we'd like to be a nation state too, and the UN's like, well, we don't recognize you as one, so you don't have a voice here.
Yeah, that's basically what's happening.
That's the continuation of imperialization and colonialism.
Well, no, this is
the UN being like, hey, we don't recognize your nation state status, so you don't get to be a nation state, even though we're saying that the nation state is, you know, how all these things matter, and
we are saying that is why all the things matter as well. Like, we're part of the United Nations, and it's like we are kind of in control of the international system. So, like, if we were to go into there, like, China could easily make the case that, hey, the United States is, you know, I guess you could say almost by definition, being an imperialist, you know, / colonialist power by trying to take a sovereign piece of land that is not recognized by the international system and make it theirs. And,
but that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
this has like the making theirs. Well, I mean, this has to make it Hong Kong's. Not America comes in and says, oh, this is our thing now.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying.
Oh, you mean in terms of propaganda?
Absolutely. This is, well, because either way, what we're saying, if Hong Kong isn't recognized by the United Nations, which I just pulled up from Google that it's not, then what we're saying from both China and the United States is going to be a remaking of the international system. Or we could just sit complicitly by and have Hong Kong and China dispute this on their own, which is what's currently happening.
Why can't the UN say, hey, we're going to recognize Hong Kong as a nation?
Well, because China has huge influence in the international system.
That's what I'm saying, is that the system is built in a way that continues colonial and imperial practices by China. Like, and other nation states. Don't you think, shouldn't Hong Kong be able to say, we'd like to be a nation state, and then if your job is to protect the nation states and end all this other stuff and blah, 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 and they say, hey, we want to be a nation state, and why don't you just say yes? And then you will be protected by the same rules that we have.
That question's very complicated, Mark, because, like, I don't want to open up a whole another bag of worms, but, like, then that just brings up other questions, like, what about Palestine? They want to be their own nation state.
Yes, and I feel like they have
but I mean,
if
like,
Israel has a right to be a nation state, why does Palestine not? And Israel right now is looking at annexing the West Bank.
That's a huge question.
No, but this matters. It has nothing to do with all these, like, political and ideological things. All it has to do with is, are we in a position of power, and can we assert that position of power in order to expand our boundaries? Right? Look at Israel and Palestine right now. And Netanyahu looking at annexing parts of the West Bank, which are actually supposed to be for Palestine. And there's been dispute over colonists in the West Bank forever, because that land, as by the Oslo Accords, which are a whole mess and, like, written in too many languages and all these problems, was eventually supposed to go to Palestine. And then you have Israeli settlers on some of those lands, which is, we're not
Right.
sure if it's technically within the rules or not, but the Palestinians have been saying, hey, you're not supposed to be settling there. And now what they're going to do is annex these, because what it is a strategic point for the Israelis, because it's the top of a mountain range, the Jordanian mountains, which they want, because they want to be able to have a strategic border on their country, which
Yeah,
is
well,
that
they've
mountain
also
range.
been invaded multiple times. Like
I
it's not,
understand that. I'm
but I mean
not saying
that's
I don't
that's a
understand
big
their
part.
reasoning.
Well, that's a
I'm
big
saying
part though.
that
Like
if they have
like
the right to do that to
traditionally though,
Palestine,
traditionally when somebody loses a war, like you're either going to lose your land or like you're going to get some type of spoil of the war. Like it doesn't make
yes, I'm
any
not
sense.
disagreeing with that. I'm
No, but I mean
saying
like
that they're
obviously like
not.
Israel. Like I'm not trying to defend Israel. I'm just seeing it from their perspective. Like if warring nations were attacked, like they were attacked by Egypt, they were attacked by Jordan, they were attacked by all the surrounding Arab nations, if they were attacked and then they pushed them, expanded their borders for their defense, and obviously took that land when those Arab countries were going to try to eliminate Israel off the face of the earth, um like doesn't are we not playing the same game by like, oh, we were just trying to seize land? Like that's what this is really all about.
I
And
know that's what it's about. That's what
yeah,
I'm saying. Is that the
and but
system
you're
that
also, but
we live
while
in
you're saying
is
that, you're also
complicit in
well,
letting people do these things. And although it can be used because it's a strategic point and because they have been invaded and because they do want to protect themselves and enjoy their rights to be a nation state and an individual state, right? Like they want their own land, their own homeland. And I completely understand and I support that. But what I'm saying is that the current
yeah,
system we have is saying, okay, well, you can annex. Well, the UN actually says you can't, says that they cannot annex it. And the United States for a long time said that they cannot annex it. So there's that. But they're thinking of doing it anyway. And now
yeah,
China annexing Hong Kong, trying to annex part of India.
yeah. So these are the peoples who like have no boundaries. Like they're the ones not, recognized by the nation state, and like that's a
UN
problem because
does.
like there are
The UN
other
recognizes China.
communities that um there are other communities that are, that's happening to as well. So
But
this
I'm just
is, I
saying
mean,
that
this is something that like everybody's like very much aware of, that there are a lot of peoples throughout the world who, Palestine being like the most obvious, that they don't have proper representation through the current system of the nation state. The thing is, like, we can't, I mean, like we tried to do this after World War I, where we divided up these lands, and they created new nation states. Well, when they created Israel, they didn't, draw out of land, a piece of land for Palestine. And it's like, this is the current problems we're having here. So like this is part of like the post 1919 world order.
it's very complicated.
No, it is very complicated, very, very complicated. So yeah, but
Anyway, it's just interesting to think about. And this is all because of monkeys. Smart monkeys. That's all we are, smart monkeys, and we could be seeing how to fix our own damn problems by slowing
yeah.
things down a bit and having
And
some smart
some
monkeys.
smart monkeys just want to have their own tree, just their own tree to hang out in.
Yeah,
They
their
don't
own
want to
tree
be
of
in somebody
knowledge.
else's tree.
These
They want to
greedy
be in their own
bastards.
tree. Some other monkeys have bigger trees, though. That's a problem.
Oh man! Speaking of angry monkeys, humans, dude, North Korea blowing up South Korea's liaison office.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of that.
Pretty whack. Although I will say this. The liaison office was actually inside of North Korea, right? It was
Right.
not inside of South Korea, which is what I thought had happened when I first saw it. I thought that North Korea had blown something up in South Korea, and I was like, oh no, it's all starting here now. Because once that happens, China's going to be doing stuff, and then it's going to go crazy. Anyway, no, it was inside of North Korea, but it is like interesting thing. And what else is interesting about it is, you know how a couple months ago we all thought that Kim Jong-un was dead?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to sound a little conspiracy here, but is there a chance that guy actually is dead? Because I think it's his sister, is showing up more and more in the news and is being tied to some very serious things in the news, like blowing up the liaison office and showing face publicly a lot more in the media.
Maybe he's not dead, but maybe he's dying.
Maybe. But
No.
here's the thing is that she, as the next person in line to sort of harness the power, seems to be pretty more bad. I know that sounds really stupid, but like she seems to be a lot more violent in nature.
Like she has something to prove?
I don't know about that. She's actually a really well, like super highly educated, somewhere in like Switzerland or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember where exactly it was, but
those
Kim
Western
Jong,
educations,
no, what's her name? What is her name? I cannot believe I can't remember her name. Just read like 10 articles just about her today. Kim Yo-jong. Okay, yeah, Kim Yo-jong. And yeah, I don't know. She's an interesting
Kim
character.
Yo-jong. She looks like she means business.
She does mean business for real, but she's wild character. She was head of propaganda.
Yeah, you guys,
which is
see it.
Interesting.
I got it pulled up right here.
Switzerland. Yep.
WikiLeaks facts right here. She's 36 years old.
She went to public school in Bern, Switzerland. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
She is the next in line of this crazy empire, and it's not like her family was, not super reclusive and trying to take over the world and stuff. And then she just went to public school in Switzerland under a different name.
No way. Under a different name.
Yep, Pak Mi-hyang.
We need to hold Switzerland accountable, huh?
Anyway, strange things going on. Very strange things going on. I mean,
yeah.
I'm very concerned about. I'm more concerned about
the United States.
I mean, I'm concerned about the United States too, but I also think that we live in a very connected world, and if things become destabilized in like the Asian Pacific theater, it could mean bad news for the whole world just in general. And I don't mean economically, but I mean it would not.
Well, definitely economically as well.
Yeah, but that's not the focus I'm getting at. The focus I'm getting at is that, boo-hoo, the economy. At a certain point, you look at like the loss of human life and like tragedies being experienced by people who are subjected to war, and like some of those things in my mind just come to the top a little bit before economics. I
guess
I'm not saying that economics aren't important and you have to run a war machine, but I also think living in a war-stricken country is not easy, and it sucks to be in that situation. And seeing war that is involving North Korea and China would be painful to watch as a person. Damn all the economic shit that would suck, but what would suck a lot more, I think, would be just the human misery of an experience like that. And I think that seeing something like that happen in the world today would also destabilize our own world as well. Like, I don't think we would be immune from this being like, oh man, that's horrible, this sucks, and just be immune. I think that would very much damage our psyche as a nation to have that happen, because it would destabilize us in a big, big, big way. Not to mention, just like I said, at the face of it, just the suffering, frankly. I don't know. I don't want to see anything happen. I'd like things to de-escalate, but it's just very, things are very tense right now, very, very tense. A lot of, well, things are very tense. Speaking of which, today is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a fascinating day. I think Juneteenth is essentially the Independence Day for people of color in America. And I think that's a beautiful thing, honestly. As I hadn't really thought about this before, I was talking to my brother Altariq, and he was like, yeah, well, it's, you celebrate the 4th of July. And he's like, but why would we celebrate that when we were slaves at that time and had no rights at all? He's like, so shit for us didn't really look up at that point,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating day. I think it's, I don't know, I like it. I think it's a cool way to look at life and experience. That's an interesting American experience that I personally will never understand, because that's not who I am. But I think that the sentiment and the emotion that I experience thinking of the 4th of July, or translate that to liberation from slavery, that's a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's fascinating to me, and I will say I am pleased to see in New York, and I'm not a fan of rapid action policy, but seeing Juneteenth declared as a paid holiday, which I think is cool.
Right. No,
because
that,
not only is it saying, yes, we're acknowledging this is a holiday, it's saying, no, this is a day when the government expects you not to work so that you can just think about what's going on, and your businesses and everyone, you know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It means something.
Yeah, I hope we turn it into more of a celebration.
I think it is a celebration for a lot of people.
It is. It's just
there's a
racial
lot of stuff
tensions
going on right now.
Racial tensions are at all-time high, and it's just.
Yeah, but I mean, it's easy to let the darkness sort of cloud over the little positive notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's
right.
a lot of cacophony of just COVID-19 and police violence and war in China, and there's a lot of loud angry noise going on in the world right now, and it's just nice to be able to slow down for a moment and just recognize one sort of positive note. It's a shame that it's being sort of only getting the light that it deserves in a time where things are not great, tensions are super high. And I'm sure, people could be a lot happier. But I think that this is a good thing. And I think it's good to recognize it. Regardless of all the other crazy shit that's going on, I think that there is only good to come from saying, look, we understand that this is the liberation of your people. This is you celebrating being Americans with the same sort of legal rights, or at least the beginning of the same legal rights as everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that is, I don't know, fascinating, and I think it's just a positive note for everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah. I think so as well.
Yeah. So it's not all bad out there. There's some good stuff going on. There's some crazy stuff going on. But there's definitely a lot of crazy stuff going on. Speaking of COVID-19, so I saw something today where Donald Trump was essentially saying that some people are wearing masks essentially just to spite him and show disapproval of him, and not to actually combat the disease. And here's what I have to say about that. There's two situations. either that is happening or it is not happening. Like those are the only two options. If it is happening, well, let's start with if it's not happening. If it's not happening, he's kind of an asshole because he is so wrapped up in himself that people just trying to do something for public health has like triggered him into feeling like people are not supporting him, or it is actually happening and who cares? You're the fucking president. Grow up and not stop caring about people being petty. Like, are you kidding me? That's a 4-year-old problem. So what if
That's
they're
true.
being petty? Guess what? They're wearing the masks, and isn't that the important thing? So, like, get over yourself and stop whining if that's happening. Who cares? At least they're wearing the mask. Like, so in no situation do I see that response by him as being like a mature, thought out, sensible sort of thing to say as an adult. It just sounds whiny,
Right.
like, and it also to me shows that he is trying to get people to show themselves as supporters for him by removing their masks, right? So he is also inherently saying, if you support me, don't wear a mask, right? So if you're a
Yeah.
diehard Trumpist and you were wearing a mask the whole time because you love Trump, but you also hate dying of COVID, and now you say, well, fuck, gotta take it off. Now you have this dividing line in the country where people who are going to go, you're not wearing a mask. You like Trump. You know what I mean?
I mean, I actually have heard people say like, "Oh, I don't believe in that whole COVID-19 thing. Like, I don't wear my
And yeah,
mask." And I'm like,
obviously
I mean,
that's
like,
true, but
I don't understand where that like they're getting all of this stuff from. Like for me,
I
like
don't
it's I
know.
have my brother's an epidemiologist, so like I actually talked to somebody who knows a lot about the whole COVID-19, and when he tells me it's real, I listen to him. So I wear my mask. Like I tell people to stay 6 feet away from me, and that's it. Like I just accept this is the new future for us.
Yeah. I mean, I
But I
don't think
mean,
it matters.
yeah, I
It's
think
like
that this
such a
this mostly
small
is
inconvenience. Who
in
cares?
This is part of Trump's world, though. It's not part of the reality of everything, because like in Washington, sure, he's having like the CNN question hosts, all wearing their mask, whereas like he's like, I'm not going to wear my mask because like I get tested every day. I mean, I think it's
whatever.
I think it's stupid that he's doing that. Like we need to be divided or like united on some issue. Like you would at least think like God, like
I
can
know,
we be
but
united on wearing a
that's what I'm
mask?
saying. It's like, dude, at least, like, come
I think this is why
on,
Mattis got so mad at him, to be honest, is because like he's never really tried to unify the
because he's so
country.
divisive.
Yeah. He
You
is a
know,
device. He is
he's
divisive.
tearing us apart.
And what's so interesting? I actually went back and I started looking into Abraham Lincoln and like one of his earliest speeches, like when the Union was starting to devolve into a civil war, like he gave a speech saying how necessary it was for the American peoples to strictly uphold the rule of law. He said like if we don't uphold the rule of law, we can't have like anarchy just and lawlessness running the streets. Like we needed to uphold the rule of law. And he was like, and it's my job as a politician, if those laws are corrupt, that we will fix it and take care of it through the proper process. But like we can't let anarchy take over because when anarchy takes over, everything we lose everything. We lose everything and we have to start over.
Right.
And I think that that's where we're at in America right now. We have people who are encouraging people to go out and protest and riot for the sake of riot and try to start some type of revolution for the sake of tearing down our current system in America and rebuilding something new. Um, I think that that's stupid. Like the United States represents like the future for all of the world. Like if you disagree with me on that, then whatever. But like we have every single race, and we touch both. Uh, we have access to both Asia and Europe. Like I think like we're it, and like if we can't figure this out, like the world is kind of probably going to go into a downward
In the
slope.
shoots.
No, I'm serious, man. Like if we really
Yeah,
can't
no,
figure
I
this out,
understand.
like it's starting to turn into like a very racial war. Like you're seeing like a lot of people who are going like fuck black people, fuck the police. Um, we're losing, you know, and there's nobody wants to be a cop. Like I definitely don't want to be a cop. And what happens when we just have a country who doesn't have police, who doesn't have the police anymore? Last I checked, that's shit that happens in like Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Where the like nobody wants to be a cop anymore, and then you have mobs out there ruling the streets. You know what I mean? That's where we're at right now, and this mob will attack you for anything. And the scary thing about the mob is that there's no leader behind the mob. It's just a bunch of random influencers. You know, these celebrities go out and protest. And like, sure, there's a lot of reason to be angry at what is going on. You know, I don't think that there's anybody really making the argument that things need to get, you know, that we need to make things worse like that. But that's what the suggestion is like, if you don't support defunding the police, then you're the problem. And it's just like, you don't really get to say that, man. Like, you know what I mean? You don't get to say that, like, I'm the problem because, like, I don't want to just abandon our police force. Like, we have to maintain order. If we are going to continue, like, attempt to abandon the police force, wouldn't that be the last thing that we try to do? Or we would at least try to, like, fix education, get more jobs in these communities, give them more economic hope. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
but
just
I
the way
don't
I see
think,
it.
I think the majority of people are not calling for a state without police. I think there's this maybe a small number of people who feel that way, but I do not think that in general people are actually, like, large amounts of people are calling for a world without police, you know, a state without police. I think people are calling for the police to be regulated reasonably.
Right. No,
And I think that they're completely
you are correct.
unregulated right now. Like, no licensure that can be revoked, you know, no sense of justice really. Like if you look at the military justice in the US, right, that's pretty stringent, and it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven definitely super innocent, you know, like it's pretty strict. It's very regulated. And not to mention, like, I mean, look, think about this: the police investigating themselves, right? And I understand there are outside watchdogs that do investigations and all this, that, and the other thing. But fundamentally, the fact that any investigations on the police are being done by the police is fundamentally just wrong to me.
Right.
Right? Because then how can you claim that you have no bias? Right? That's complete horseshit. There's no way that you can say you have no bias. You know, and then, I mean, the lack of training. Think about the amount of training that you go through to be a police officer, right? Compare that to boot camp.
Yeah.
Boot camp, you live and breathe everything you're supposed to be learning about how to be, you know, a soldier or a sailor or an airman.
Yeah,
or a Marine.
The point is, it doesn't stop at boot camp though. Like before you
I know,
deploy,
but that's what I'm saying. Boot
before
camp,
like
think of
Marines
how
deploy, we
intense
train
boot
for a
camp
whole
is.
year. We
I
train
know,
for a
but think
whole year
about
just to
just
go
boot
out
camp. How intense boot camp is, and that's just to get you like
to weed out the
kind of
bad
in.
guys. We need to weed out
That's
the bad
it.
cops.
That's all that is, right?
Yeah.
Never mind the year or more of training that you may go to for your specific MOS, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing anything with weaponry, like, oh God, the amount, at least in the Navy, the amount of like inventory, you know, like for bullets, like
Yeah.
finding every single brass fired. You know what I mean? And obviously that's not the case in a lot of places, but like the point is that there are a lot of regulations in place and measurements in place. And if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it was an abuse of power, right? Like that's how it would go down in the military. If you go to court martial or you go to, you know, NJP, like if they if their board is looking at you and they're like, we all know you did it. You know you did it. We all know you did it. Like, that's it. It's not like, oh, well, you get this big giant legal deal and, well, all right, in court martial, yeah, it's different, obviously. But NJP,
No, you're right. I didn't.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah, the general article. We got you under the general article. We can't get you for anything in particular. What is that,
I
Article
don't
83?
like the way your face looks, Mark. So I'm going to give you a general article.
Well, don't get me wrong. That obviously causes some problems, but you know what else it does? It makes people kind of stay on their fucking shit. You know what I mean? It makes you stay on your shit. And where is that in the police? You know, here's another thought between comparing it to the military and the police, right? In the military, if you're dishonorably discharged, you can go fuck yourself. You don't get any benefits. You don't get no pension.
And
you don't get shit.
Yeah.
You
It's
don't get
equivalent
shit.
to a felony, actually.
Yeah, you're fucked. You don't get shit. So tell me why in the fuck we can have officers who are discharged because of things they did that were wrong and still receive a pension and benefits. How the fuck can you be, the police equivalent of dishonorably discharged and you still get your pension? You still get all these benefits. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. You are right. They should at least receive half benefits or something. And I have, like, in the military, I have seen stories where, like,
why any benefits? If the people who are going out to get shot at, across the world, and they get nothing if they make a mistake, why the fuck should our police who are at home in our own country be getting a pension for a dishonorable discharge? Period. At any percentage.
Different source of funding.
If it's not about the funding, though.
No, I know, but it's just a different bureaucratic system. Like the military is.
It's about regulation and not incentivizing people to fuck up. Because economically, in a kind of stretched out, skinny kind of way, you're incentivizing people with what is effectively an early retirement because of misconduct.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Are you not? If
you are correct.
I can get discharged dishonorably. I can just go out and do something horrible, and I'll still get my pension. That's just an early retirement that you just what the fuck?
Yeah, no.
So I see a lot of problems.
Is that something that we know for a fact to be true, though? That they will get early retirements if they fuck up.
I don't know about if it's a full retirement, but I definitely know that there are cases of police being charged and then still receiving their pensions from the force.
Mm-hmm.
Which should happen never. It should happen never, right? I don't care if it's one or two cases here and there. It should happen never.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just think that I don't want to live in a world without police, but I want to live in a world where the police are actually regulated strictly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If you want to act like the military and you want to restrain people in the ways that we've been seeing them restrain people, and you want to fire tear gas on civilians, then you need to have the fucking discipline of somebody trained to do that and to be in those situations and not to escalate everything and understand that it's a stressful fucking job. If that's the way you want to behave, you need to be living by the same rigorous standards. Yeah, and code. You have to.
Yeah.
Because otherwise what you are is a fucking lunatic with too much power.
With a gun. A lunatic with a gun.
Who just gets to walk around.
And throw people on the ground for no fucking reason.
Exactly. You have to have a strict code.
Yeah.
And you have to fucking work for it and earn it.
Yeah,
and understand that the power you have is not your power. It is the system's power. It has nothing to do with you. You are just an instrument of the machine that we're all a part of, just the same as if you're in the military. You're an instrument of the machine. It's not about you. You have no power by yourself. You have power because you're part of this organization which prides itself on discipline and code.
Right. And we need men who have a code, and who are strong and who could do that. And last I checked, most men don't want to do that anymore. Nobody wants to be a cop. Especially now, nobody wants to be a cop. And here's the thing: is like cops are like leaving, right? Like their departments are like record numbers now, and like what that's going to create is a power vacuum. And if the mob fills that vacuum, I
It's
mean,
gonna be whack.
what, dude? Like we could have like Mao's cultural revolution here in the United States, where political correctness people are just chopping people's heads off for calling each other racist for any accusation. Maybe all white people are racist, because I've heard that thrown around. So, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, because I think that this would be better to go in more detail on another episode. You know, 'cause it is a lot of what's going on with Chaz. So, but yeah, you got any last minute words? Anything to tell our audience?
No, I just think I don't know. I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, I had a lot of pent up thoughts today because I was getting crushed with midterms all week. But I think the important thing here is to look for some sort of truth, right? Like the truth that we don't really want to see. Like, how connected to monkeys are we? How is our behavior so similar to monkeys? And actually learn from that. Try and get an outside perspective on what we look like and see how we're not that different and how we could improve, right? Because a lot of the things that we've been talking about today, I think, stem from very animalistic instincts. And I think the price we pay as a species to detach ourselves from this idea of being beasts, being animals, which we are animals, but in order for us to make that leap and make that stride to say, no, we're not, we're better than that because we can think, we need to actually start using our heads, right? And stop behaving in these same sort of patterns. Otherwise, you need to accept that you're an animal and you're going to act like an animal. If you don't want to be an animal, you want to say you're better than an animal, then I think humanity as a whole has to get on those
like animals.
Exactly, right? Like that's it. And I feel like there's no argument for you to say, oh, humanity is not acting that way. Yes, we are. Yes, we totally are. Yeah, there's great people in the world. Obviously, there's great people in the world. Coco the gorilla was a great gorilla in the world. She does not represent all gorillas, because not all gorillas spend 20 years living with a researcher having all these crazy experiences, right? Like, gorillas on a whole are the gorillas that are not being raised with research teams. And or just humans on a whole are not the onesie twosie people who are great people. Humanity is humanity. We're all humans. We're all the same species. We're all the same race. It's the human race. We're all people, right? Like, so we're all accountable for the fact that our species is violent and aggressive. And if we're ever going to get away from that, then have to start acting like it. Start acting like that's not what we are. Start using your head and stop trying to like argue with everyone about everything and just try to understand what are the elements of truth in anything that somebody says. Why is the thing that bothers you so much aggravating? I think it's usually because there's a nugget of truth in the things that people say, however small it is, and that little piece of truth that spreads out into this larger, untruth is so painful to look at, because the larger untruth would never exist without the small piece of truth.
Yeah. And that small piece
complicated
of truth
and fucked
usually is that it's your fault and every person in humanity's fault. Like it really starts with each individual.
Yeah, humans are fucked up like that.
And we have the capacity, each human has the capacity to make things better, and we have the capacity to make things much worse.
Much worse.
And we usually choose the latter.
I know. It's amazing we've got this far, honestly.
Well, we've only got this far really off of the backs of a couple good men throughout history. Like that's
Well,
in
and
reality,
the
and
backs
every
of like a lot of slaves, frankly.
yeah, but I mean, like I don't want to go down that aisle.
It's true though.
No,
And
I
I'm
mean, I
not saying in
understand. I
America,
understand
I'm
what you're
saying in
saying. I understand what you're
globally
saying,
in
but
history.
I understand what you're saying. But I mean, like, you know, besides the whole slave question, like Western civilization did create something much better. And not in a culturally superior way. Like like everybody in the world wants to come here, and like I believe that we did some stuff right. We don't, like sure we have the sins of our past, but every
Oh
single
yeah.
civilization has the sins of their
Yep,
past.
all of them.
Not
All
you,
of them.
there's not one you could point to that we're not where you America is not unique for having sins in the past.
In the Bible,
I
there's the concept of original sin,
yeah,
right? The
that's
sin that everyone carries just because you exist,
because you're a human.
because you're a
Because you
human.
because you
Exactly.
ate because of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Yep.
Right? Original sin. And we all have it. And people don't like to admit that.
Mhm.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
I'm not a religious person, but
They got some
I
pretty
think there's
crazy
some
ideas
nuggets
in
of
the Bible.
truth in there too.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that there's the creation story of Adam and Eve, and what's the second story in the Bible? The story of Cain and Abel, where and Cain and Abel are the first two
Can't
men.
hear you.
You can make the argument that Adam and Eve were not really even men because God Himself made him. You can't hear me?
I didn't hear any of that. No, what did you
Oh,
say?
what I'm saying is like in the Bible, there's the first two stories, the first two stories are Adam and Eve, and then the story of Cain and Abel. Adam and Eve are not even real. Adam and Eve are not even real men because God made them. So the first real men in the world are Cain and Abel. And what do? Cain kills Abel because he's jealous because God accepted Abel's offering and didn't accept Cain's offering. And what God tells Cain is that like this is all your fault. You didn't give the proper sacrifice. And like the moral of the story that people are supposed to get from that is that there are some sacrifices in life that are worth making, and there are some sacrifices in life, or some sacrifices that are not worth making. And if you make enough of those sacrifices that are not worth making, perhaps like putting off on your homework assignments, or not searching for that job, not doing the extra hours of work when you work at your job for overtime when you knew you had a bill to pay. When enough of those stack up against you, you did it yourself. And then the things that the consequences of that are going to you're going to reap what you sow. And so I guess the real moral of the story is that there are sacrifices that are good and sacrifices that are bad. And if you make the sacrifices that are good that pleases God, like you work hard, you take care of your family, everything will get better. But if you don't, eventually you'll get to the point of being murderous, because the person who does work hard and has a nice house and has a nice family and has a nice car, you're going to get jealous of them. And what happens? That jealousy turns into resentment and a murderous. And we've seen this throughout history, this pattern. And I would say the most recent examples are with all the Marxist revolutions throughout the Cold War, which is the critique of the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, the haves versus the have-nots. And when that's why there's this concept of wealth inequality. When wealth inequality gets too great, and there's too much resentment in the world, like revolutions happen. And that's why like there's so much talk about revolution here in the United States right now, because wealth inequality gap is increasing, and we all know it's true.
It's massive. It's
It's
huge.
massive, and it's it needs to be addressed. But
I think that it's
killing
important.
people and taking it from them is not the answer.
No, but I do think that it is important to recognize that the original example that you made of, if you don't work as hard at this and you don't, do your college degree, or you don't, labor away and toil for this thing, and then you get envious of somebody else who has been toiling. I think most people agree with that, but I think that it is important to note that a lot of the people on top have not been toiling. They have inherited power and wealth from time immemorial, and they're not toiling away for this, right? Whereas the average person is working their fucking ass off for nothing, you know?
Right.
And
that is true.
And I think that's important to note because, yeah, I could think it's in
But
that scenario, if you want to take it back to Cain and Abel, it's like, I'm giving you all the good sacrifices, but you just keep giving that guy everything. What the fuck? You know, and if you're not religious, you're looking up at the government or the universe or whoever you talk to when you're in the car by yourself driving your shitty fucking job, you know. Well, you're thinking, what the fuck? I put in so much goddamn work. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And I'm getting not even 0.1% as far as the guys sitting on top who have just inherited everything. So I can understand where the frustration is coming from. Do I think that you should cut off the heads of all the bourgeoisie and all the intellectuals and like go around raiding all these things? No, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's, you know, we've seen it happen. They tried it out. It didn't work. It was very gruesome and bloody and horrible and didn't fix the problem. So whether or not you think the violence is justified, let's just go ahead and say no, because it didn't fix the problem. It was not an actual effective solution. So maybe we just don't.
That's actually a very good point, that they've never actually fixed this problem. Nobody has fixed this problem.
Exactly. So even though, you know, it might have felt really good, which I bet it did for a lot of people. I bet it felt a lot worse for a lot of people later, but I think at the beginning it probably felt really good for a lot of people. But it did not achieve the goal that they were trying to achieve. And I think that is the important thing here, is whether it felt good or not, it did not accomplish the goal. So I think it needs to be avoided regardless of your beliefs. You know, and I feel like I got to put that out there because, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who say the ends justify the means, and it's like, well, I don't think they really do if you don't actually get the end.
Well, those people are Marxists, and they believe.
And even if you do get the end, I think there's a whole ethical discussion about, well, we could live in a perfect world if we just killed all the bad people. You know, that's a real slippery slope kind of way to think. Yeah. I think, because then who's the bad people? People who disagree with you. You know, it's like, there's a slippery slope. And I think, again, this is the price we pay as a species to protect us from ourselves, right? We agree, hey, we're going to not do some shitty stuff, even though we can. We totally could, but we're just going to not to protect us from ourselves. And even though you think that you could create utopia by killing all the bad people, I think as a human, it's important we all think, will this create utopia? Probably not. Probably, you know, probably if you're going for utopia through means of execution, maybe that's not a good way to start a utopia.
Well,
you know, because then it's you're just adding shit to the world in terms of you're adding violence. You know, you're just injecting more shittiness into the world, which I don't think you can achieve utopia by injecting shit into your main line. You know, look at heroin addicts. They hit the main line all the time, and it's utopia for about however long, and then it's
back
horrible.
To reality.
Back to reality, you know. And it's a painful disease. Like addiction is a horrible disease. And we as a species have it. You know, murder, we can justify it. Somehow we can justify it. Utopia, no one can argue with that.
It's just the Trump supporters that are preventing us, or it's just the crazy Democrats. It's always somebody. it's always some other, and
it's
like this is something that's
as long as you have
a
that
real
idea, there won't
flaw
be a
of,
utopia.
of human beings just in general, and like we're aware of it, but yet we still behave as if it doesn't matter, like as if we're not aware of it, because we always still think of the other, and we know we don't logically conclude that it is also my fault.
Yeah, and that othering is like a cancer for us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to understand we're on the same page. Like, we are on the same team because we're all in the same fucking boat, which is this blue ball in space. You know? One ship, one fight.
Just floating through the universe.
Yeah. You know? I think, I don't know. It's wild how animalistic we are, even though we claim we're not all the time, you know?
Yep, it is pretty crazy.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah,
We're getting there. We're getting there really, really slowly. Maybe we're getting there slower. You know, to tie us back to the beginning before we close this up, you know how we were talking about monkeys had a capability to understand money and not time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're going to keep understanding money and understanding violence way faster than we understand the implications of those things on ourselves.
That's probably true. It's truer for more
I think
people,
that our rate of technology and our rate of the understanding of power dynamics is growing much more rapidly than our rate of self-awareness. And if we don't get self-aware pretty quick and understand that we're really shooting ourselves in the foot like every other day, I don't know how far we're going to make it. I'd like to see a Star Trek world.
Buddy.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to see Star Trek, the world. I'd like to live in that. That'd be cool. I feel like if we all got on the same page and just really worked on science, we could get there. But I think it's more realistic that we're getting a bit Mad Max.
Even scientists are bad at following the scientific method, and they'll deviate to be able to follow some tribalistic party line.
Yeah, maybe.
And, I mean, it's weird what we're seeing.
But I still feel like that might be preferable to Mad Max.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? So, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Anyway,
happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Happy Juneteenth, everyone.
And we'll see you guys next week.